There is a fungus that has been used to treat disease for longer than medicine has existed as a concept. Not a drug derived from a fungus. Not a compound extracted and synthesized and patented and sold in a bottle with a child-proof cap. A fungus. A living organism that grows on trees and in soil and on the forest floor, that was used by every ancient healing tradition on every inhabited continent, that was documented in the oldest pharmacopoeias in human history, and that was systematically removed from Western medical practice during the exact period when medicine stopped being a tradition and became an industry. I found this by accident. I was researching the history of antibiotics, tracing the timeline backward from penicillin, looking at what people used before Alexander Fleming's famous Petri dish in 1928, because people didn't just die of infections before antibiotics, they survived them. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans contracted bacterial infections, fungal infections, parasitic infections, and they survived at rates sufficient to sustain and expand the species across the entire planet. Something was working. Something was treating infection before the pharmaceutical industry existed. And when I found what that something was, and when I traced what happened to it, I stopped sleeping well for a week. If you've ever felt that history is hiding pieces of the truth from you, then before we continue, take 1 second to please subscribe and leave a like. It helps these forgotten stories reach more people who still question the version of history they were given. Now, let us return to the mysterious mushroom they say could cure every disease, and why it suddenly vanished from the world. The something was mushrooms, not a single mushroom. A category. A vast, diverse, ancient pharmacopoeia of fungal medicines that every major healing tradition in human history recognized, documented, and used. And the deeper I went, the more I found that one genus in particular stood at the center of this pharmacopoeia with a consistency that crosses every cultural and geographic boundary I've ever encountered in any investigation. Ganoderma, known in Chinese medicine as lingji, in Japanese medicine as reishi, in Korean tradition as yongji, names that translate across languages to variations of the same concept. The mushroom of immortality, the divine mushroom, the mushroom of spiritual potency, the 10,000-year mushroom, not a food, not a flavoring. A medicine so central to the ancient healing traditions that it occupied a position in the pharmacopoeia that no other substance, plant, or mineral or animal could match. Go read the Shenengben Chao Jing, the oldest known pharmacopoeia in Chinese medicine, compiled roughly 2,000 years ago from traditions stretching back much further. The text classifies all medicinal substances into 3 categories: superior, medium, inferior. Superior medicines are defined as substances that can be taken continuously without harm, that support the fundamental vitality of the body, that treat not specific diseases, but the underlying condition that allows disease to occur. Lingji is classified as superior, not one of many superior substances. The superior substance, the first entry, the highest classification in the oldest medical text, in the oldest continuous medical tradition on Earth. This raises a simple but critical question. If a substance was considered the most important medicine in human history by the civilization with the longest continuous medical tradition on Earth, why has modern Western medicine never seriously investigated it? The silence was deafening. Start with what the modern research actually shows. Because research exists, it's published, it's peer-reviewed, it's sitting in databases that any physician could access, and it shows things that should have triggered a revolution in how the Western medical establishment approaches disease. Pull up the research on beta-glucans. These are polysaccharides found in the cell walls of mushrooms, particularly concentrated in Ganoderma species. Beta-glucans are biological response modifiers. They don't attack disease directly. They modulate the immune system. They upregulate immune function when it's suppressed. They downregulate it when it's overactive. They don't push the immune system in one direction. They balance it, calibrate it, restore it to appropriate function regardless of which direction the dysfunction is running. This is extraordinary, and the reason it's extraordinary is that it describes a mechanism that modern pharmacology considers essentially impossible. Modern drugs are designed to push, to suppress, to stimulate, to block, to inhibit. Every pharmaceutical mechanism operates in one direction. An immunosuppressant suppresses. An immunostimulant stimulates. You take one drug for an overactive immune system and a different drug for an underactive one. The idea that a single substance could modulate in both directions, restoring balance rather than imposing a specific state, contradicts the fundamental paradigm of pharmaceutical intervention. And yet the research shows exactly that, study after study, in vitro, in animal models, in the limited human trials that have been conducted. Beta-glucans from medicinal mushrooms demonstrate bidirectional immune modulation. The same compound that enhances immune response in immunocompromised subjects moderates immune response in subjects with autoimmune conditions. The substance doesn't have a direction. It has intelligence. Biological intelligence. The kind of intelligence that a living organism, a fungus that has co-evolved with the immune systems of animals for hundreds of millions of years, might be expected to possess. As if they were following instructions they didn't fully understand. Except in this case, the fungus understood perfectly. It had been understanding for longer than the human species had existed. The deeper I went into the research, the more I found. Triterpenes in Ganoderma species showing anti-inflammatory activity comparable to pharmaceutical anti-inflammatories without the side effect profile. Ganoderic acids demonstrating hepatoprotective effects, protecting liver cells from toxicity. Polysaccharide compounds showing anti-tumor activity in multiple cancer cell lines. Antiviral properties documented against influenza, herpes, and hepatitis B. Cardiovascular effects including blood pressure regulation and cholesterol modulation. Neuroprotective effects, antioxidant activity, blood sugar regulation. The list spans dozens of studies across decades of research in Japan, China, Korea, and increasingly in Western institutions. Not one therapeutic effect. Dozens. Across virtually every major category of modern disease. From a single genus of mushroom. The mushroom that the oldest pharmacopoeia in human history called the most important medicine in existence. This raises a question that the modern medical establishment has never adequately answered. If the research shows this breadth of therapeutic activity, why isn't Ganoderma the most studied, most funded, most aggressively developed therapeutic substance in modern medicine? The answer, the deeper I went, had nothing to do with science and everything to do with economics. Because you can't patent a mushroom. You can't patent a living organism that grows wild on every continent. You can't patent a substance that any person with basic knowledge of mycology can cultivate in their home. You can't create a monopoly on a medicine that the forest gives away for free. And the pharmaceutical industry, which is the primary funder of medical research, the primary employer of medical researchers, the primary advertiser in medical journals, and the primary lobbying force shaping medical regulation, has no financial incentive to validate a medicine it cannot own. The pattern repeats with unsettling precision, because Ganoderma isn't the only medicinal mushroom that the research supports. It's one of dozens. Turkey tail, Tremites versicolor, the most extensively studied medicinal mushroom in the world. PSK, a compound extracted from turkey tail, has been approved as an adjunct cancer treatment in Japan since the 1980s. Approved by a regulatory agency in a country with one of the most rigorous pharmaceutical approval processes on Earth. Japanese cancer patients have been receiving mushroom-derived medicine as part of their standard treatment protocol for over 40 years, and the American medical establishment has barely acknowledged it. PSK is not approved by the FDA. It's not prescribed by American oncologists. It's not covered by American insurance. A compound that Japan considers standard cancer care doesn't exist in the American medical framework. Lion's mane, Hericium erinaceus. Research showing stimulation of nerve growth factor synthesis. Documented neuroregeneration in animal models. Human trials showing improvement in cognitive function in elderly subjects with mild cognitive impairment. A mushroom that appears to help nerves grow in a medical landscape where neurodegenerative diseases are among the most devastating and least treatable conditions in modern medicine. And the research remains in the margins. Chaga, Enonotus obliquus, used in Russian and Scandinavian folk medicine for centuries. Research showing anti-tumor, antiviral, anti-inflammatory, and antioxidant properties. One of the most potent antioxidant substances ever measured, growing on birch trees in cold climates, available to anyone who walks into a northern forest. Unprofitable, unpatentable, unstudied at the scale its therapeutic potential warrants. Cordyceps, Ophiocordyceps sinensis, used in Tibetan and Chinese medicine for over 1,000 years. Research showing effects on oxygen utilization, endurance, kidney function, and sexual health. A fungus so valued in traditional medicine that it was reserved for the imperial court. Each of these mushrooms has a body of research supporting therapeutic applications across multiple disease categories. Each has been used by traditional healing systems for centuries or millennia. Each is available in nature, cultivable without proprietary technology, and impossible to patent in its natural form. And each exists in the margins of Western medicine, classified as a supplement, treated as alternative, dismissed with the same institutional shrug that greets any therapeutic substance that can't generate shareholder returns. Here's where the history becomes specific, because the marginalization of fungal medicine in the West wasn't a gradual cultural drift. It was a specific, documentable consequence of specific institutional decisions made during the period when modern medicine was being shaped into the pharmaceutical industry we know today. The Flexner Report, 1910. Abraham Flexner, funded by the Carnegie Foundation and supported by the American Medical Association, published an evaluation of medical education in the United States that transformed American medicine permanently. The report established standards for medical schools that prioritized pharmaceutical intervention and laboratory-based research, schools that taught herbal medicine, naturopathy, homeopathy, and traditional healing practices were systematically defunded and closed. Within a decade of the Flexner Report, the number of medical schools in the United States was cut by more than half. The schools that survived were those that adopted the pharmaceutical model. The schools that taught the old medicine, the plant-based, the fungal-based, the tradition-based approaches that had sustained human health for millennia, were eliminated. The deeper I went, the more the Flexner Report looked less like a quality improvement initiative and more like an industrial consolidation, a mechanism for eliminating competition, not competition between bad medicine and good medicine. Competition between medicine that couldn't be monetized at industrial scale and medicine that could. The traditional healer who prescribed mushrooms and herbs couldn't generate revenue for a pharmaceutical supply chain. The physician who prescribed manufactured drugs could. The Flexner Report didn't improve medicine. It narrowed medicine. It cut away everything that couldn't be bottled, branded, and sold, and called what remained the only legitimate form of healing. And fungal medicine was one of the casualties, not because it didn't work, because it worked too well and cost too little, because a medicine that grows on trees can't sustain a pharmaceutical industry, because a treatment that the patient can cultivate in their own home doesn't generate office visits, prescription renewals, or insurance claims, because the entire financial architecture of modern medicine depends on the patient's inability to heal themselves. And a mushroom that the forest provides for free is the ultimate threat to that architecture. I'm not telling you that mushrooms cure every disease. I'm not telling you to replace your medications with fungi. I'm telling you that the oldest medical tradition on Earth placed a mushroom at the top of its pharmacopoeia. That modern research supports therapeutic applications across dozens of disease categories. That one mushroom-derived compound has been approved for cancer treatment in Japan for over 40 years. That the American medical establishment has conducted almost no large-scale clinical trials on substances that every other major medical tradition in human history considered foundational. I'm asking why the most extensively used category of medicine in human history is classified as alternative in the only medical system that refuses to study it seriously. I'm asking why a compound approved for cancer treatment in Japan doesn't exist in American oncology. I'm asking why the research that does exist, published, peer-reviewed, sitting in the same databases that physicians consult for every other treatment decision is ignored by a medical establishment that claims to practice evidence-based medicine. I'm asking what it means that the medicine your ancestors used for thousands of years, the medicine that the forest still provides, the medicine that the research still supports, was systematically removed from Western medical practice during the exact period when medicine became an industry whose revenue depends on your inability to heal yourself with something that grows on a dead tree.